Welcome to the Medical Muse podcast. Discover the humanistic aspects of physicians and scientists as they describe their career paths and any advice they have for current medical students. Each episode, we interview a new guest and discuss the future of the field. This is the Medical Muse.
Hi everyone, today we have Dr. Carisa Champion with us. Dr. Champion earned her medical degree from Southeastern University College of Osteopathic Medicine while concurrently earning her law degree and master's in public health. Dr. Champion is currently finishing up her fourth year of her surgery residency at University of Florida College of Medicine, Jacksonville. Dr. Champion recently finished the Gray's Anatomy Surgical Communications Fellowship. She has served as a White House intern and is the lead of patient education for care access research, where she contributed to the testing of Eli Lilly's new FDA-approved monoclonal antibody to treat COVID. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of Dr. Champion's accomplishments. We're very excited to talk to Dr. Champion today, and we hope that you enjoy our conversation with her. And I almost forgot to mention, she loves Star Wars. Dr. Champion, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I really love working with medical students. So thanks for having me.
Of course.
Welcome to the show, Dr. Champion. Just to start off, if you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and what made you interested in medicine.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Tampa, in Florida. I'm from Pittsburgh, but I grew up in Tampa. And I guess I grew up doing some mission trips, like medical mission trips with my family. My parents are both nurses and always had that exposure to healthcare, I guess. Growing up, it was something I was always comfortable with. I just thought it was the norm to have your parents on call. And my parents do a lot of home healthcare, so it was really sweet. They would take me actually to see some of their patients sometimes, especially the patients who, like, their family members didn't really visit them very often. And my parents always just had such a big heart for their patients that that just became like a natural part of my upbringing. And as I got older, I loved doing medical mission trips and wanted to not necessarily, like, I never necessarily thought I would be a doctor, but as I got older, I just thought more and more about it. But honestly, I was drawn to a lot of different things. Growing up, I loved government, I loved communications, I loved languages, I loved anything that brought communities together, which is a lot of intersecting things. You know, I did a lot of different things. I did like community planning, I did event planning. I had a wedding planning business for a little while. And I loved bringing people together, and I loved policies that helped people. And I think that as I went into college, I was like terrified of, choosing the wrong major. I don't know if y'all have that, but for me, I was just like, what if I go into the wrong thing? And I think a theme for me is that I choose things that I'm passionate about, even if they don't make sense. So at that time, I had a suspicion that I'd want to go into medicine possibly, but I really loved international affairs. So that's what I majored in. And I went to Florida State, go Noles, and I majored in international affairs, but I also did pre-med. And I didn't really know how those things, and it caused me a lot of anxiety. I didn't know how those things would kind of overlap, but sorry, this is a long answer to your question. I didn't know how those things would overlap, and I learned about something called public health. And that kind of, to me, tied together all of those different things. There's a lot of different avenues with public health. So I decided that's what I wanted to do. And then I learned about osteopathic medicine, and that was something that kind of really tied into that preventative healthcare and mind, body, spirit, and that really spoke to me. So I decided that I was going to continue down that path of just pursuing things that I was passionate about. And at the end of college, because I did have a lot of policy experience at that time and medical mission trip experience, I decided I was going to apply to everything. I applied to DO schools. I applied to law schools, and I applied to public health programs. And Nova Southeastern at the time, Nova Southeastern University College of Osteopathic Medicine, now Kiran Patel College of Osteopathic Medicine, had all three, and actually had a good reputation for all three. So I approached them and I got into all three and asked them if they would let me pursue all of them at the same time. And they thought I was crazy. And I was, but we worked out a way that it would work. I proposed, I think it could work this way. And I'm so glad. I'm so glad that I did it. I wouldn't take it back. I'm so thankful that I had that opportunity.
Were
so
you
the answer? Sorry.
No, that was great.
Were you used to juggling that many things at one time prior to entering medical school and also entering law school and also entering your master's of public health?
I mean, I guess I had been doing it I guess. I mean, probably the same thing for you guys, right? So when you were in high school, you're like, gosh, this is rough. Like, and then you enter college and it's like a whole nother level, right? And then medical school is just way more intense than that could ever be. And every time you go up, it's like another level. In high school, I was really involved in like different activities. It was like student government president, all that. And by accident, by the way, I didn't even run for it. And then by accident, I became student government president. And I think that began this trickle of like learning that I loved involvement and I loved leadership. And from that, I became involved in a lot of things in college, again, international affairs, as well as pre-med. I did the White House internship. I did a lot of service trips, medical mission trips. I was involved in the school. I was on homecoming court, just, a lot of involvement in things that I was interested in, right? I wasn't trying to like build a resume, but I was pursuing things that really caught my interest. And when you do those things, I think you guys probably can also attest, because you're doing this podcast, that when you're doing things that you're interested in, you do a better job at them and you're able to do more because it energizes you, right?
You have fun.
So I think that's part of why I was doing stuff that I liked, like law school and medical school. I enjoyed to a certain extent. I mean, as you guys know, the tests really suck, but I enjoyed learning what I was learning.
How are you able to manage getting 3 different degrees simultaneously? I mean, medical school by itself is, it's so much. Right. So how are you able to manage all these different things? I mean, did you put this together with administration? Like how did, like, with you looking at it first and proposing something, or how did that process go, if you don't mind sharing that?
Sure. Well, I had done some research about if anyone had ever done all 3 together, and no one had. But there was a school, New Jersey's College of Osteopathic Medicine had done DOJD, where they partnered it with another program. And then of course, a bunch of schools had like DO MPH. And then I looked on the MD side, had anyone done an MD, JD, MPH, and no one ever had. But I looked at schools that had MD, JD, or DO, JD, and I looked at schools that had DO or MD, MPH, and just kind of figured out what I thought it should look like. And then they were like, okay, let's try it. And so, there'd be days where I'm at the law school, and y'all are familiar with the campus because you go there too. But I would be at one end of the campus at the law school, and then I'd have to like truck with my backpack, over to the medical school and then back. I got my steps in. It was good for that.
And so not only were you involved in all 3 at the same time, is it true that you were the student government president as well for the medical?
Yeah, I was student government president, and then I ran for the national student government president. Like there's something called COSGP, the Council of Osteopathic Student Government Presidents, and I was the national chair of that as well. And again, guys, I mean, when people say stuff like, when you read my bio, like it sounds really cool, but if you're doing whatever that thing is that you love doing, like for me, it's leadership. I love relationships. I love connecting with people, and I love leadership. And I kind of hit my stride when I'm in there, right? And so for you, whatever that thing is for you, whether for Dan it's with his chickens or whatever that is, like you get energy from that, right? And it's fun. And that's what you do when you're not busy studying. So it can sound really awesome, and it's been a great experience. I don't want to deny that, but it's also that these are the things I like doing. So that's why maybe I have the energy to do them, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know if you've ever heard of this book. What's it called? Strength Finders. Have you ever heard of that? It's like I don't know, one of those like self-help leadership books or something. And I learned about this actually when I was the chair of COSGP. The gist of it is you learn what your strengths are, because a lot of people want to work on their weaknesses and improve themselves. But if you learn what your strengths are and you use a lot of your time doing those things that you're strong in and that energize you, then you have more energy and more efficiency doing those other things that you have to do.
That reminds me.
That's a really cool way to live life, is to really try to maximize your time in the things that you love and the things that you're good at and that you can help people with.
So to follow up on that, how did you develop that self-awareness to figure out your strengths? What were your strengths? And then how did you then capitalize on that?
Well, I am a very big believer in mentorship. So for me, starting in high school, really, I like crave mentors, right? So I have amazing mentors in my life, but it's because I seek them out, right? So like if I'm interested in something, what do? I just try to get as much opinions and people who've done something that I'm interested in as possible. And I like to learn and hear their stories and float what I'm going through and see what their advice is. And, some of them my pre-med advisor in college, even though I had a 3.9 GPA at Florida State University, which is not an easy school, was like, you're not going to make it into med school, so don't even try. So, some advice isn't necessarily great. But for me, mentorship is a huge part of that, right? So to become more aware of what your strengths are and to learn where those might be best applied. For me, it's just really relentlessly seeking out mentors and just putting a lot of time into that kind of self-development, because once you know what your strengths are and you use them, that's when you can best, I think, help other people.
I like that. I like the fact that you've mentioned focusing on your strength instead of your weakness, because then you can kind of multiply your strengths. So where were some of the first places you went on mission trips that kind of got you so fired up about, being around people, helping people, and even maybe sparked your interest in medicine and stuff like that? Where did you go? Tell us about those experiences.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with my church and my parents. So I went to Trinidad. I went to Tobago. I did mission trips also locally. People don't think about it. I know that y'all at Nova know, but I know some of your listeners maybe not at Nova, that they do something called the Reach Fair, or at least they did when I was a student, which is a local underserved medical mission to areas that just don't have a lot of access to healthcare. So we did things like that. And then in college, I went after Hurricane Katrina hit. Me and a bunch of pre-med students were like, we just literally loaded up a van and we just got in and drove right after the hurricane. And we were there for like at least a week. And it was I'll never forget it. It looked like the end of the world. And that was definitely an experience, just trying to figure out where to help, And then in medical school, we planned a whole trip to Haiti right after the earthquake. And that was insane. We did it as the students though, because the school they couldn't, safely put their name on it. So we just organized our own trip.
Wow.
And I've done a lot since then. I've gone to Italy. I've gone to India. I can't even think of all the places I've gone at the moment, but I love it.
So with all your different interests, whether it be through medical mission trips and medicine and law, is there like an overarching goal that you're trying to reach in the end, or is this kind of, are these kind of things you're doing along the way, trying to see what happens kind of as you go?
How long do we have on this podcast, y'all?
As long as
That's a great question, Raj. Honestly, I don't have an end. Like, I want to be this while I'm 39, or I don't have an end goal necessarily. I have things that I think would be really cool and that I'd love to do if they worked. But I've never been like that. I don't know if that's fair to say, but I haven't really been that person like since I was a little kid. I'm gonna be a doctor, and then I'm gonna, like, it just never was that. I just kind of really tuned into myself. I really tuned in, and what I mean by that is I really spent a lot of time in my faith and church with my family and my mentors, like developing my ability to listen to like my gut and my inner voice. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like that thing in you that like directs you, like, I guess you could call it your heart, whatever. I think I call it my gut. And so when something captures that, like when I find interests, I just dive in and I go for it. Cause it's like, you only live once, like go after what you love doing. I mean, I definitely have long-term goals as far as, having a family and giving back to the underserved and working in medical missions and working in health policy. I don't have specific end game goals though. I definitely want to be involved in health policy to some extent and in community development and involvement there. But I'd like to finish my residency. I'd like to do a lot of things. I think if I had one ultimate goal, it would be to be in a Star Wars production. I wanted to do that since I was 3 or 4 years old. That would be my ultimate goal for sure.
Maybe you'll have the chance to do that. You were able to get a part on Grey's Anatomy, so I wouldn't put it past as a possibility.
Well, hopefully.
Can you tell us a little bit about your role in Grey's Anatomy? How did you get that role? Is that available to everybody? Or can every surgery resident apply, is what I meant?
Yeah, it's open to all surgery residents. The fellowship is open to all surgical residents. And I don't think it's like the most well-known about opportunity, but it is a really unique fellowship. I don't think that, it's not for everyone, but it was perfect for me. This is a multi-part answer, but the simple version is, for the last couple of years, I had wanted to do something like this. I didn't know it existed, but I knew I wanted to be involved with media and with specifically shows about surgery that can be really inaccurate. Mm-hmm. Specifically, I was reading about, they were about to start making this show called The Resident, which now is a TV show. But when I first read about it, it was like a pilot idea. And so I wrote to the show and I was like, hey, do you guys need an advisor to bounce ideas off of what it's really like to be a surgical resident? And I never heard back from them. And so since that time, I had really just been keeping my ear out if there were any opportunities like this. And I didn't think like an official opportunity existed. I just thought maybe I could like help out here and there. But I think from a public health perspective, right, I've done a lot of research, but what I've really learned is like patients don't read research journals. They don't get their medicine from their doctors. Even sometimes they get it from the internet and they get it from TV. So in my mind, before we talked about growing up a little bit, when I was younger, I wasn't like a science person. I really was more of an artistic, like just outgoing kid. And I loved acting at school and church plays. I loved photography. I loved ceramics. I loved painting. Like I loved art. And I feel like that was more my natural, if it's a thing, bend. And so for me, this was a way to tie a lot of that stuff together. And ultimately, again, big secret, ABC is owned by Disney, who also owns Star Wars. But when I heard about this opportunity, I jumped at it. I knew I was going to apply to it. It was a matter of when was I going to do it? Was I going to do it at the end of my 5th year? Was I going to do it at the end of my 4th year? It was just really, it was kind of a timing thing. And then the timing worked out perfectly. They needed me during a time when I could be gone. And it just was perfect, because then the other part of that is, and y'all can shut me up at any time, by the way, but the other part of that is, I hadn't really watched a lot of Grey's in the last couple of years. To be honest, I'd only watched like maybe the first few seasons. And then, med school hit in college and all of that. And I don't watch TV in residency. But I had happened to watch a couple episodes of their prior season. And in their prior season, they had touched on a storyline that was really near and dear to my heart. It was anti-human trafficking, which I used to be involved in. And I thought that was really cool, because personally, that when I was a resident, I had patients that I suspected for trafficking. And so I thought that was awesome. And I'm like, you know what? I'd love to be involved with a show that's going to talk about that. And then when I got on, they're like, we want to continue that storyline. Can you help us? And I'm like, yes. And they also wanted to do COVID. And I had been around, obviously, from the beginning of COVID, March through July. So pretty much the whole show is like, the setup of the show, a lot of it is based on my experience with COVID and a lot of other physicians and staff members. And stories that I had heard of, or stories that we learned of through COVID. So it was definitely a way that I could really give of my experience to shape the way the public saw how physicians were dealing with the COVID pandemic, and things like human trafficking and social injustice, and a bunch of really cool topics that we actually explore this season. So it was really awesome. It was really needed for me to be able to have that creative outlet. When that time came, it was perfect.
Can you tell us a little bit about your role specifically and what your day-to-day was like?
Sure. So as the medical, it's surgical communications fellowship. And what we do is we work a lot with the writers. So we're in the writer's room pretty much every day. And there's 18 writers, including me. And they actually let me write stuff, which was really exciting. I wasn't expecting that. And we just, the beginning of a story, we're dealing with up to 10 episodes at a time at any given time, in some stage of production. But in the writer's room, we pitch stories, and then that gets fleshed into eventually an outline, into draft scripts, and then that just gets edited 50 times. And then you bring it to the set, and then it gets edited more as you're acting. And when I'm on set, I help kind of show the actors how to do this procedure, or how to say this word, or what this means, what's really happening, or kind of tell them a little bit about my experiences so that they can have some motivation for their character's expression. And then also I got to do some, extra acting. It wasn't I was a main character or anything, but I did have my DO degree on my name. So on our name tags, because it was COVID, they gave us a big name tag so that patients could see our faces behind all the masks and everything. And it had my picture, and then it said Dr. Champion, and it had a DO. And a lot of people were like, oh, they misprinted your ID. And I'm like, no, that's my degree. And they were like, well, what's a DO? And so I got to talk to them about what a DO was, and finally get a DO on the show. So that was really exciting. That was a really big thing for me. My goals were to get a DO on the show, an actual character, which I got, and to get Star Wars lines snuck in the show, which we also accomplished. So that was exciting.
That's a great goal.
Yeah, it's the big goals in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Priorities.
Hang out with the actors and actresses at all?
Yeah, absolutely. My first day, I met Ellen Pompeo, and that was pretty neat. And I've met all the actors. I've gotten to work with them extensively. and they were really nice. I didn't think they'd know who I was. Like I thought they'd forget who I was after the first day, but they like remembered me, which I was honestly really surprised about because I was like this person in the corner, but got to know them, really nice people. And they're just basically, you know, people that were really into acting when you're in high school, you know, like the drama kids that grew up to be famous actors. So they were pretty cool. And the staff was really neat, and to learn all of the hard work that goes into these shows. And I mean, to get 30 seconds of a show, it takes months. I mean, it's amazing. But it was really special to get to be a part of that. And we've heard so much feedback about how like Grey's is the most accurate show portraying COVID and different things that we're talking about this season. So that was really cool.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. So you had to go to California for that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I lived in LA for almost 7 months. And that was interesting because it was COVID, right? So I wasn't really able to go many places. It was like my house or the set. That's about it. So everybody's like, oh, you lived the LA life. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. I really don't. I have no idea. It was a lot of, it was a lot of being on Zoom and then on set. That was what it was like, but it was really cool.
Do you see yourself following through more projects, the creative outlook, like maybe through writing or acting or anything like that in the future, or photography or?
I mean, I have to. Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about like mental health. We all have our outlets, and I have to have two things. I mean, well, three. I have to have like a connection with my family and my faith. I have to have connection with nature. Like I love being outside and traveling. And I have to have an artistic outlet. Like I just have to. So whether that be writing or working with people on a production or photography, like it's just a natural thing that I will always do. And I would love to be involved with more projects and media in the future.
So I want to hear about how you became interested in surgery specifically then. Did you know you wanted to be a surgeon, or is that something you learned while you were on rotations?
No, absolutely not. I actually, funny enough, I was so convinced that I knew what I wanted to do that I told the dean at the time, listen, I know that we're supposed to do a surgery rotation, but I know that I have zero interest in it. So can I replace that with something else? And he was like, no, it's required. You can't get out of it. So I begrudgingly did it. And then unfortunately at the time, that was my thinking, started to really like it. And I was upset. I was upset that I liked it because I was like, don't love it. Don't you dare love it because it's a terrible lifestyle. But at the end of the day, you know, my gut won again. I can't ignore if there's something that I love, I can't ignore that. So everything else was boring to me. Like every other rotation was just boring. And I love surgery. And then I realized it actually made sense because sometimes the things that I do don't at the time make sense, but I've learned that that's okay, right? Like you don't have to do the prescribed path to get to medicine. You don't have to do the specialty that makes sense. It needs to be the specialty that you're interested in because that's what matters. So I realized later after talking to more mentors that if I really want to do medical mission work, you know, I can always learn medicine and bring medicine sustainably, which is a whole nother topic. But if I learn surgery, I mean, they're having dentists deliver babies in a lot of these hospitals, you know, on medical missions. So of course they would need surgery. And then I could also deliver medicine. So why wouldn't I go into surgery? So I switched gears, honestly, at the end of my third year. It was like the end of my third year, beginning of my fourth year that I was like, dang it, and completely switched. And here I am.
What drew you to it? What happened during that rotation that said, okay, I have to do this?
It's a really great question. So when I started rotations, which you guys are going to be doing what in like 6 months?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I started rotations, I saw so many people that were, especially the year ahead of me, being like, God, I just can't wait to go and do X, Y, Z, whatever their specialty of choice was. And I was really jealous of them because I was like, man, they know what they want to do. I have no clue, or at least I thought I knew. And I can't wait for the day where I'm like, I can't wait to do this thing. So that's a really good question. And I asked that question from so many people. And I don't think that there's necessarily a simple answer because I went back and forth between really like three things. And I made like charts, pros and cons and all that, logical stuff. Try to talk myself into things that made more sense and that were more conducive to like things that I want to do. At the end of the day, my gut went out. It was just like, what's the thing that you want to wake up at 4 a.m. to do? That's what it was. And for me, that was surgery. I loved it. So I chose that. And this is the thing, once you make that choice of what the thing is that you want to pursue, that's when that feeling of, God, I can't wait to just do this, for me anyway, comes. It's after you make that decision. So my advice is to go with the thing that you love.
Has being in surgery coincidentally aligned with your passion for law and public health? Has that in particular been complementary or, yeah? No.
Yes and no. I mean, surgery is a very demanding field. It's not like you have a ton of, like if I went into primary care, I feel like that'd be more conducive to doing, whatever, policy, whatever. But I've still made it a priority. So I'm involved with policy still. I consult. I'm the president of a lobbying firm at the moment. And I've written articles on things like, gun violence and that kind of stuff that kind of overlaps with surgery. So it does in a way. I don't know that it's like, if I was to be like, hey, you want to pursue health policy, you should do surgery. But again, I mean, for me, it's just what I loved. So it finds a way. I think that when you follow, at least again, for me, if you follow the things that you love, you see it later. It's almost like 20/20 vision. Like you see it later of like, oh, well, that works out great. Like this just intersects and it works. So yeah, I mean, I've seen those things, but it's not necessarily like a prescription that I would say, hey, if you want to do this, you should do X.
Also, we are aware that you had to switch residency programs, I think midway. Could you mind elaborating on that and how you were able to adapt to that whole situation?
Yeah, it was really stressful. That was probably one of the most traumatic things. And I've been through a lot of life experiences, to say the least, but that was hard. I applied to a residencies and which I don't advise doing, but I got lucky. I think ranked, interviewed at all these places. And I think I only ranked like 5 programs, which is really stupid, but I got really lucky and I matched. And to this community program, it was one of the oldest DO surgical programs in the country in Philadelphia. And I loved it. I loved it so much. And it was a perfect storm of circumstances. My program director was diagnosed with stage 4 gastric cancer, and our hospital was bought out by another system. Long story short, our hospital didn't close, but our program did. And this was at the end of my second year, and it was really, really traumatic. It was really, really hard because what happens is they say, like, number one, the laws with orphaning residents is that they don't have to find you a residency close by or even in your same specialty. So they could be like, you're going to do family medicine in Montana, and they would have satisfied their due diligence. No, they did not do that. They did find us a residency nearby that would take us. But I was like, I specifically only ranked 5 places because those were places that I would want to go. So if I can't go to those 5 places, then I'd want to find somewhere at least that's near home. My family lives in Florida. So I reached out to a couple of programs in Florida. And I don't know if you remember, but at the beginning of the interview, I told you that I went to Florida State. Mm-hmm. So the idea, and gosh, I hope people from work don't listen to this, but the idea of applying to UF, to me, I was like, there's no way, like, I'm not doing it. But I had friends that lived in Jacksonville, and I was like, hey, I'll apply, you know. And so, like I said, I called up a couple programs, I emailed a couple programs in Florida, and UF was the first one to call me back, and they called me back like right away. And they were like, we'd love to have you. Like, you sound like you'd fit in great here. We'd love to have you. And so I was like, wow, God really has a really funny sense of humor to send me to UF. So this program is totally different than the one I chose. I chose to go to a community program that was small and that was traditionally osteopathic and very like embedded in the community, had been there forever. And that was what I wanted to train in, because that's kind of what I'm looking to do. It was underserved population, the whole 9 yards. This program is a level 1 trauma center, completely academic research. I mean, really respected, and, you know, big MD institution attached to a medical school, like the literal complete opposite. And I'm so glad that I've gotten to do both, because both have their pros and cons. So I've gotten the benefit of the experience of both of them. So they're both really great, and I'm lucky. I'm thankful for both of them.
Did they have a resident drop out and then you got to take that spot, or did they make a spot for you?
No, they made a spot for me. It's a long story, but with orphaning residents, your funding follows you. The requirements through ACGME is that the program has to have enough cases to justify temporarily increasing. I don't know how much you know about funding for residencies, but temporarily increasing their funding, because that comes from Medicare, Medicaid. So temporarily increasing their cap, their spots. So they created that spot for me.
That's amazing. You got lucky. You're right where you need to be then.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your research with Eli Lilly and the monoclonal antibodies that can treat COVID?
Yeah, that was random. You guys have those experiences in life where it's not necessarily that you were looking for it, but it kind of fell in your lap?
We do.
Those experiences. Yeah. So this was one of those. I moved out to LA, was not looking to do anything else. I had enough on my plate. I wanted to really focus on the fellowship, and I wanted to do a really good job. And then this came along where randomly I was talking to a friend, and they were just telling me about this company that was working with Eli Lilly and doing a whole new approach to research, right? Because usually research involves going to like a clinic or a hospital or a lab. And this company was doing research in a brand new way by bringing research to people. So what they were doing was, 43% of the deaths from COVID in America are from nursing homes or long-term care facilities. And so what this company was doing was, anytime a long-term care facility anywhere in the United States had a positive COVID case, and that was in network with Eli Lilly, we would show up there with an RV and a moving truck. And within 7 days of that first index case at that place, we would set up a whole lab where anybody that lived or worked there was eligible to get to enroll in this study, where they would get the monoclonal antibodies. And it was insane. I mean, we were flying all over the country. We were driving all over the country. And I was like, well, I could help out. I mean, I miss patient care. And I mean, God, it's a pandemic. Like I told you guys at the beginning of this episode that I grew up, helping in nursing homes with my parents, right? Seeing a lot of these patients that hadn't really spent any time with their families. And so that really grabbed my heart. And COVID, obviously, just anything I could do to help find a cure for it. So I was like, I'll help out for like 2 weeks, and I really can't do more than that. So after like the second day, they asked me, do you want to be in management for this company? And I was like, how do you say no to that? So I did both. I did my fellowship, and I still am a lead at this company where we're doing a lot of COVID studies and now non-COVID studies, capitalizing on this way of doing research where we bring their research to people. And it's been crazy. I mean, I've lived with an internal medicine resident at UCLA when I was in LA, and I was always awake before her, and I was always going to bed after her because I was balancing the fellowship and this research job. But I mean, hey, it paid off. We had, I think, was it the first FDA approved COVID prevention treatment? It was pretty awesome to be able to be a part of something that groundbreaking. So that was a whirlwind experience.
Wow. So that it seems like that method would expedite the research in general, regardless of the like what you're studying.
Absolutely. It's been actually, the government took notice of how quickly we were able to meet all of our milestones and to really do quality work, to the point where now they're like not mandating it, but they're really strongly encouraging that a lot of research companies look at how we did it. And we've taken off. Like now we were already working with a lot of other companies, but our sponsorship has just skyrocketed. So we're doing a lot of studies, COVID and non-studies now. So it's exciting. 97% of physicians aren't involved with clinical research or trials. And our goal is to show, even a family practice doc who has his own practice or her own practice, that they can also be involved in clinical trials. They don't have to be connected to some large academic institution to do that, because it really does provide more treatment modalities in the long run for patients. So that's the thing that we're operating on.
So going back to your expertise in multiple different fields, we hear a lot about how innovation happens in different fields, and curious to know if there was any particular initiative or something where you were able to combine medicine, law, and public health in a single effort to create something or do something.
Yeah, I mean, I think I use the three of them a lot. Like really, in this job, I use it a lot. In Grey's Anatomy, I combined all three, right? So I was talking about social justice. I was talking about health law. I was talking about health policy. I was talking about medicine. So in everything I do, I kind of capitalize and draw from those expertise. When I was in law school, I won the National Health Law competition. And when I was done with my presentation in Chicago, they asked me, they're like, "Are you in medicine? Because you like really know this stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, I am." And that goes a long way. And then on the medical side, being involved in leadership and health policy, I draw on them all the time because they really do intersect more than people think. And I think that's why I'm really passionate about the intersection, is because my law student friends hear me say this all the time. I was on a panel last week for COVID treatment disparities that was held by the Florida Bar Health Laws section. And one of my classmates was like, "Yeah, you used to talk about that all the time, about how like when health and law work together, there's so much that we can accomplish together, because a lot of social injustices involve health disparities." So, a lot of people say like, "Oh, lawyers and doctors like are pitted against each other," but honestly, when they work together, there's so much they can accomplish. So I'd say, yeah, a lot of my leadership, a lot of my health policy draws on all three of them. So it's a great combination. I encourage more people. This is the thing that I tell people, is that as physicians, we are advocates for our patients, right? And a lot of people think of that in a clinical realm, which it is, obviously. But if you aren't advocating for your patients and practicing the way that you think is safest for your patients, then someone else is advocating a way that you probably wouldn't think is safest for your patients, right? Somebody, honestly, maybe a lot more inexperienced than you. So when I was working in DC, which by the way, the reason they took me in DC as a White House intern was because of my passion for the intersection of health and law. And there's a lot of people there, regardless of administration or year or president or whatever, that are making and impacting health law that are honestly college interns, right? They know everything from like a theoretical perspective. They don't necessarily have a great grassroots grasp on these things. So I'm very big into, a lot of doctors are like, politics, I leave that for like the politicians. But like, if you're not involved, at least to some extent, whether that be funding OPAC or signing those petitions that like the different political action honors or the different political action societies send out, if you're not at least doing that, somebody else is, and it's going to impact the way you're practicing, and it will impact your patient's care. So whether or not you're into politics, we all need to be advocates for our patients. You got me on a soapbox, Raj.
No, that was a great answer. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Welcome.
So your residency has what, 1.5 more years?
Yep.
What do you think you might do when that's finished?
Well, I'm looking at different options right now. I'm looking at different fellowships that I'm interested in.
Okay.
And I've put in some applications for a few different things that I'm waiting to kind of hear how those turn out. But ultimately, in the long run, I do want to be involved with surgery. I want to be involved with health policy and public health, probably in like the media to health policy intersection, and continue being involved in leadership. But ultimately, like, that's not my end all be all goal of life. I think I definitely want to be able to spend time with my family. I want to be able to travel and really enjoy life, stop and smell the roses and work.
Maybe you can enjoy life a little bit. Didn't you just buy a green van? Didn't you mention to me that you had one of those in your past? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Did. That's a great point. And I also love teaching. That's something I also want to be involved in, is teaching. I was teaching for Nova actually last year, health law and ethics and professionalism. But yes, so growing up, I had a hippie van. Her name was Daisy. She was 1975 hippie bus, and we went camping a lot. My family and I went camping like all around Florida, all around the country. We would do, anytime I had a vacation, we were in another national park, and I loved it. So my Daisy's still in my family. She belongs to my brother now. And I drove by this hippie van in LA for sale, and it was like for a steal. And anyway, I bought her and I named her Meadow, and she's really cute. She's 1977 bus. And my brother's actually working on her right now because she doesn't really run great. But I'm excited to fix her up and hopefully, camp and go to some national parks.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You can stop by Big Bend.
What did you say?
If you drive it back to Florida from California, you can stop in Big Bend.
Yeah.
It's a good national park.
Beautiful national park, yeah.
When I drove out to LA, that's what I did. I drove out and I went through national parks. And then on my way back, because I just got back, on my way back, I went through national parks. That was my goal, was to see friends and go to national parks.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about some different maybe failures that you've experienced? And when you do experience a failure, what's your kind of mindset to get back on your feet, and how do you recover?
That's a really awesome question. That's probably one of the best questions I've ever been asked. I think it's fair to say that I've had, like, probably a lot of failure in my life. I mean, I've failed tests, I've failed life choices. We all have failures in our life. And I'm trying to think of a really good example because there's probably so many to choose from.
We can come back to it if you like.
Yeah, man, you should have prepped me with that one, because that is a great question. But I think, it's really a great question to ask. And I think it's important to say that, you know, we all love to show like the highlights, right? On like social media and whatever. And everybody's like, oh, wow, you do all these cool things. But like people don't see the struggles. They don't necessarily know, you know, the different life challenges, right? And I think that personally, what I've seen is the people that have gone through a lot in their life, they're the ones that are really, truly genuine, empathetic people, right? They're the people that have a lot of depth and grit to them. And I've gone through a lot of things in my life, and I've had a lot of failures. And I think something that is really important for me with my failures is that I dig down deep into my faith and my mentors and my family. And those are the things that I go to for my identity, not my positions or my titles, or at least I need to be transparent and say, at least I try not to, right? Because I think it's easy for all of us to like reach a high of whatever accomplishment. And whether or not you want to define yourself with that, a lot of times you can. But I really intentionally try not to do that. And I think my biggest value is my family and my faith and my friends and, you know, all of that other stuff. You know, if it all falls away tomorrow, what are you left with? So for me, whenever I have a failure, which is not infrequently, to be honest, because I read a quote the other day, like something along the lines of like any person on their way to success is always failure. So when you have successes, you have to know that there's a lot of failure that leads up to that. So I think a really big part of that is, you know, there's a term that everybody's throwing around now, which is a really great thing to talk about, but imposter syndrome, right? Oh, yeah. Like being genuine. Like I'm the first person to tell you that I fail a lot. And I think a big part of that is that you just need to really know what your identity is rooted in. And for me, it's not my successes. It's not my titles or my experiences. I'm grateful for those things, but those are not who I am. It's who I am as a person, which to me is more important. That is my identity, and my priorities is my friends, my family, my faith. And those things keep me going when I fail, because I fail a lot. I really do.
Yep, we all do.
Thank you so much.
We all do.
Is there any advice you have for medical students, whether in medicine, whether they're trying to maybe do something like you did, combine different fields into their career path? Is there any sort of advice you have, you know, for students just to think about now or whenever?
Something I tell people a lot, and it's a multi-part thing. I tell people you can do more than you think you can, right? Because people are like, how are you doing this club and that whatever and whatever? But you can do more than you think you can if you're doing stuff that you really enjoy. You're doing it for the right reason. So like I've met a lot of people who are like, oh, I just, you know, I want my CV to be X, Y, and Z. And it's like, if you're doing it for your CV and the titles, then you're doing it wrong, and you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And what's the point? Like, why are you chasing after that? Again, what is your identity rooted in? Is your identity rooted in your CV? Because if it is, you need to check yourself. You need to really look at your life, because I don't think that's a good way to go. I really don't. But what's the ironic part of that is that when you chase after things that are important to you and your priorities, then all that stuff kind of fills in, because you're doing a better job. You have more energy to do things that are exciting for you. And when you're giving back to people and you're trying to help people from your strengths, if the resume was what you were not going for, you get it because you're doing things that are important to you. And so you can do more than you think you can. The flip side of that is watch out, especially for, I think, a lot of people that I've worked with over the years. A lot of them are really strong leaders, right? The people that go to medical school, a lot of times, not always, are strong leaders, type A personalities. And there can be an addiction to leadership. There can be an addiction to adrenaline. There can be, this, when I say addiction, like that chasing after the next thing, it's never enough. You want the next experience, whatever. And I think you really, if you're going to even position yourself at all in those type of experiences, like, for me, I've done a lot of leadership. You got to know what your priorities are. And you really need to, at least for me, it's more relationships and those types of things than the positions or the whatever. So as long as you're balanced and your priorities are healthy, you can do more than you think you can. But balance that with knowing your limits, knowing your bandwidth, right? Because if you burn yourself out or your loved ones out, what was the point of doing any of it anyway?
I like that
I
advice.
like that. That was awesome.
That's kind of what Raj and I are doing here with the podcast. We have leadership positions, and we've held them throughout, I guess for me, I could call it a career because I'm a little older and I haven't always been in school, but also in school we have leadership positions. But one of the ones we're most passionate about is this project, because we like to sit down and we like to talk to you and other people and build those relationships and just get to know people on a, better, connect with people. And I think that going towards those things gives you more passion in the things that you do. And so that's why I'm excited about this project that we're doing.
I love it. And I love that you guys are doing this, because when I was talking about like mentors, I think that when you hear someone's story and it stirs something in you, like it's something you're interested in, or they had an experience that was similar, and you hear that story, because stories are so powerful. It can shape someone's direction that they go in life, So when medical students or whoever the listener may be for your podcast hear different people that you interview, I mean, you're really impacting possibly people's choices and directions. So that's really cool.
It is, because when you listen to certain stories like that, indirectly, those people can be a mentor. For instance, I've listened to the Tim Ferriss show for many years now, and I have never met any of the guests in person. However, I'll go back and listen to them 3, 4, maybe 5 times and take out different activities or different, any sort of information they give. And it's almost like they're all kind of my mentors and they don't even know I exist. It's kind of cool.
I totally agree with that, 100%. So I'm glad you guys are doing this. This is awesome.
Well, we appreciate you for joining us and sharing your wisdom. We learned so much, and we'd love to have you back. So if you're willing, we'd really love to have you back.
Well, I'd love to. I'm so sorry. I feel like I talked the whole time, and I would have loved to hear more about y'all too. But yeah, anytime, I would love to come back if I can help in any way. Thank you so much.
Medical Muse is produced by Timothy Crowe. Your hosts are Daniel Epstein and Raj Kavadi. Social media coordinator, Anja van der Osten. Music on the show by Foxy Music. For more information, check out foxymusic.com. Join us next episode where we talk with Dr. Wael Barsoom, practicing orthopedic surgeon and former president of Cleveland Clinic, Florida. Lastly, would love to connect with you. Follow our Instagram, _medical_muse, or on Twitter @medicalmusepod. See you next time.